Yo,
Yo, can you hear me okay?
yeah. How's it
Bless.
going?
Chilling, bro. Yo, I don't know if you got my message. I was saying I'm using my phone right now. Is this okay? Or would the laptop be better?
No, that's good.
Okay, bless, brother. Okay.
Yeah. Go. Awesome. Um, yeah, let's just dive right into it. Ready to go?
Yeah, I'm blessed, brother. Thank you.
Sick. Awesome. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Two Degrees Podcast, brought to you by the Play On Foundation. The Play On Foundation. If you aren't yet aware, check it out: www.letsplayon.org. Foundation that focuses on raising funds and awareness for brain aneurysm development and prevention. And if you have any questions, anything that you need to learn about it, just feel free to follow at Play On 2013. But in the meantime, we have a fucking awesome guest today. He just released his latest or first comedy album.
First comedy
This is
album.
your first comedy album,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to hearing everything you got to say about that. And just because like I'm also getting into the stand-up game, and you're fucking hilarious, so I'm eager to get into this. But before we do, today's episode is sponsored by Queen Bean Coffee Roasters up at Bathurst and St. Clair. Check that spot out today. I do you drink coffee?
Yeah, definitely, bro.
So I'm trying out coconut milk in it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Coconut milk. Honestly, I find coconut milk slaps more than like almond milk because I feel like almond milk you could taste like when you heat up almond milk, it has like a weird aftertaste.
hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. But like
Yeah.
whenever I use coconut milk, I it's always just been in cooking, right? So it's like that's how
Yeah.
I associate it. But yeah, uh Costa Rica Terrazoo. That's the flavor of this one. So check them out. They're a dope spot. Support local businesses. But today's guest, Jesse Singh. How's it going, Jesse?
Bless, bro. Thank you for having me, brother.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. I guess we'll start with your album. Congrats.
Thank you. Appreciate
Fucking hilarious. Um, my favorite joke in it is the Wim Hof one. Just cause like
Ah,
just cause I do ice baths, right? So it's like
yeah.
it makes so much sense. But tell me everything leading up to that album in terms of getting, when did you know you were ready to make a comedy album?
Shit, that's a good question, bro. And to be honest, personally, I didn't even know if I was ready. Like, even
Hmm.
when like coming out with this initial album, like one of the main reasons why I put it out was just because I'm someone who I would say like I'm someone who isn't the much like when I make decisions, I'm not really the type of individual to rely too much on rational or logic-based thinking, right? I think that comes with any creative though, because like as a stand-up comedian, and you probably can attest to this, on paper, it sounds like a fucking nightmare of a career. Like, why
Hmm.
would you throw yourself into a position where there's no security, there's no safety net, you're performing for, five people in bars and open mics to try to construct a story or make something funny. Like it sounds crazy, but
Yeah.
intuitively, it's one of those things that you just feel drawn to. And I feel like this was similar to that, like where I felt like I was at a point in my career where emotionally I had this urge to put something out. Like, cause stand-up comedy is one of those things that's separate from music, whereas like music is like someone can watch you live, love your songs and love your music, and they can go back and listen to the song over and over, and it'll still hold kind of the same replay value.
Hmm.
But if someone sees me live tell a joke several times over, at some point that joke starts to wither away. There's no power left, right? Because they can anticipate it. It's not the same as the first time you heard it.
Hmm.
And I felt like because I had all this material that I had, created and cultivated for over the course of like 10 years, 8 years, um, I knew that I wanted to not get rid of it, but I knew there was a point where I was like, yo, these topics and this subject matter is something that I've spoken about for years now. And I've also grown as an artist and as a person. But because of the fact that I put so much time and effort into cultivating it, I don't want it to just get lost into the ether. So
Mm,
that's why I think a part of it was like I wanted to leave something behind of my own work for myself, and to know that, like, there was a way of still reliving those jokes and reliving those stories whenever I had a chance to, or whenever my friends had a chance to. So I think that was a big drive for it. I think it was just I got to a point where I'm like, I want people to hear this, and people that haven't seen me live or haven't even heard of me can have a chance to listen and like maybe resonate with the story or two. But mostly it was just for me. And it
yeah.
just felt like a good time of putting it out, I would say.
Okay. And then you said, so you've been doing comedy for 8 to 10 years?
Yeah, yeah. Like
And-
the first time I ever did a set, I was 18.
Okay.
And for the first 2 years, I was very inconsistent. Like I was still trying to find my footing. I was probably doing like one show a month type of
Mm,
thing, if that. But then after the first 2 years, I started taking things a bit more seriously, and I was like, I saw an opening, and I kind of, and Johnny will tell you this. He's like my best friend, but he's also a comedian, and like he kind of makes fun of it all the time, but it is true. Like he kind of did help. Um, he was definitely a catalyst in like
mm,
me continuing to pursue comedy and take it more seriously. So.
yeah. And then any of these jokes that are on this album that you were telling when you were 18? Or
No.
tell at least? Okay.
Like the subject matter, yeah. I think there was definitely topics in there that I wanted to touch on, but I just didn't have my voice back then, or I didn't know how to tell it. So I think, uh, but like there was definitely certain jokes on there where the foundation was built.
Yeah.
Like I would say, like when I first started, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, like I knew there was jokes about, my mom being a single mother, and like stories about my dad, and stories about her even, and like trying to figure out a way to incorporate all of that. So there was like little bits and pieces that existed back then, but over the years obviously got a much more refined.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, this has happened to me with like acting where it doesn't click until later. Like you can have an idea, a concept, and then all of a sudden something else happens like 5 years later that makes you realize, oh, I need to add this, and then it would make it make sense. Was that the same kind of experience with that?
Yeah, yeah. I think
Mm,
there was that, and I think art in general is one of those things where it evolves with you as a person. Like as you evolve as an individual, your comedy, your art, your music, your acting, whatever it is, evolves with you as well.
yeah,
And going back to it, like I was saying, when I first started, it's kind of counterintuitive, but like even today, like I'm not the most extroverted person. Like I'm very much an introvert at heart, but I'm comfortable where I feel comfortable. But if thrown into a new situation, I'm not really the person that's able to like introduce himself, or like,
mm,
go out and mingle with people. I'm not really good at that. And Johnny was kind of the opposite of me, whereas he was a lot more outgoing and outspoken. So I think when I first started, having a friend to jump in, because I didn't meet him through comedy. We used to work at Walmart together. And
nice.
so I think when he found out I did stand up, we kind of just started rolling together. He started taking me to different open mics, but he was always the one that was like able to talk to people and
So he
introduce.
was in it first and then brought you in.
No, no, I was in it first, and I
Oh,
introduced him, but he was just more of like the outspoken one. Like he was like comfortable like talking and
yeah.
things like that. And I kind of piggybacked off that, like being
Mm,
able to network and talk to people. And then from there, like I said, I got way more comfortable. So I think, like you were saying, what was the initial question? I'm sorry.
oh no, just in terms of how like you form a joke over the top over the years where it's like
Yeah,
where all of a sudden there would just be one extra, you'd hear a line that'd be like, oh, I need to put that with this joke that just never
yeah,
landed to make it work.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Were there any jokes back then where you look at it now and you're like, that had no legs at all.
Yeah, there's one joke that I still fucking am trying to make work, and it's about like it's about like the topic is irrational fears, but like the story is basically how like I was down, and it was a true story. Like I was in downtown Toronto, and in the moment, it's one of those things where you're like in the moment, you're with your boys, and you're like, this is fucking hilarious. Like, I gotta tell the story, and then it doesn't translate on stage at all. So it was one of those situations where like downtown Toronto was like late in the night. It was like 3 a.m. or early morning, whatever you want to call it. And it was like regular Toronto scene, right? Like you see a bunch of like, you know, shady looking people. There's like, crackheads running around and shit on the street. And then there was just amidst all of this, there was just a guy in front of the Tim Hortons like peeling a grapefruit. And in my head, I'm like, that's the scariest guy out of everyone. You know what I mean? But like I was trying to paint this picture, but it just never got anywhere. So
It's genuinely one of those you had to have been there.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
oh
yeah, yeah,
man,
definitely.
interesting. Um, with that concept of like crafting jokes and coming up with ideas for jokes, I'm curious if this has ever happened to you. Or first off, like I guess, do you believe in like higher powers and like the divine and stuff like that?
Definitely, like 100%.
Okay. There's this concept, and I guess like Pixar's Soul. Have you seen that one? Where it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's this place that people go to and connect with. But like, have you ever had a joke that you wanted to tell, and then all of a sudden you heard another comedian do it, and it's like, ah, that's
Yeah, I mean, definitely like I don't think word for sure, but I think the
okay,
subject matter definitely
gotcha.
is like you'll see and at first it used to bother me kind of like at first I'm like I would get upset because I'm like fuck like now I can't do this joke or like
Mhm.
this person has the same joke and you kind of jump to that in your head like yo did they hear me do it and now they're doing it type of thing
Yeah.
but I think if I see comedians and there's two ways I look at it like if there's some comedians that I highly regard and I respect doing this joke um and I see them do it, I to me it just makes me feel like okay, at least I'm on the right mental path. Like
Yeah.
I'm thinking parallel to the person that I admire, and that's
Mhm.
probably why my jokes sound the same anyways, is because I'm trying to replicate that voice. So
Gotcha.
it's either a sign for me to like either fall back into making more an original sound for myself, or just allows me to know like I am on the right path.
Mm.
Um, and then outside of that, if it's like other comedians who, I wouldn't consider, not to say that like I don't want to shit on anyone in the industry, but like that I would consider
Say
like,
their initials. Just
but I mean like that I would consider as being someone that I know who has a history of maybe stealing jokes or not really making original material,
Mhm.
and they're doing the joke. That to me is a sign like I can do better. Like, yo,
Gotcha.
if they took the material or if they have the same joke as me, that's a telltale sign for me to be like, like you know what? Like maybe it's time to retire this bit for a reason, and
Yeah.
that could be the reason. Because like I could think of something better.
Is there an L in his name? No, I'm joking. Because like, yo, it's so wild how this just happened. But last week I tried a new joke out, and the concept is phobias,
Hmm.
where phobias mean you're afraid of something, and
Yeah,
then like there's like a little extra part where I go into it where it's like you never want to meet people for the first time when they're going through a phobia because then that just you judge them
yeah,
immediately. But then that got me thinking of the word homophobia, where they're not really afraid. And it's why I think
yeah,
Dave Chappelle keeps going in on trans people is because they keep calling him transphobic, but he's not afraid. It's
Yeah,
like when you have a phobia, and like my brother, he arachnophobic. He sees a
yeah,
spider, like he freezes.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's fear. Like you want to get out of a room if there's a
yeah,
spider there. Where if there's a gay person in a room, they'll stay there. Like they're
yeah,
not homophobic. And yo, verbatim, especially down to the example of arachnophobia. There's the new TED came out with
yeah. The TV series.
the show, yeah, on Amazon, and
Yeah,
they had it in there, and I was like,
yeah,
how? It's crazy how it's like it's exactly what I was going for, and
yeah,
then it's
yeah.
like I'm seeing it in front of me, and I was like, damn, that's crazy how it just all just the idea of it. It's like somebody's gonna think of it as well because it's connected to this.
Everything is just yeah, yeah. I see what you're saying. Like it definitely is like, and I think that's where that whole spirituality component comes in, right? Because like there is a connected consciousness, and like every comedian is looking at the world, maybe not in the same light, but we're looking for that, right? We're looking for those little nuances of life. And I also like spoke to someone else about this as well, where like every premise, every idea or subject matter in stand-up has been tackled, right? Like
Mm,
there's no real topic that you can say has not been done. There might be different angles and perspectives about it. Like there's gonna be 10 different relationship jokes that involve relationships, but it doesn't mean each joke is the same, but the topic and the premise is the same, right?
yeah,
The same way the phobia thing, like you were talking about, because I've heard different premises about homophobia and them talking about it. Never compared to arachnophobia, but the idea of phobias has still been touched on. So I
yeah,
think like there's a difference where I feel like people become too vindictive or too attached to this idea that this material is mine, like,
mm,
whereas like parallel thinking definitely does exist. And it's also the fact that like not to say that you shouldn't call someone out. Like if someone has like word for word the same shit, you know what I mean? I
yeah,
think like and they saw you do the joke, I think that's different because they're deliberately taking off food off of your plate now and they're like, now it's diminishing your credibility. But if you see something that's similar or even a joke that's like not like your closer or it's not what is gonna make you known, I don't see anything wrong with just being like, yo, fuck it, like I'll just think of something better.
yeah. Hmm,
Yeah.
fair. With that, then, like, was there any, I guess, motive, even if it was underlying or subconscious, but was there any motive to your album of like, all right, once I put this out there, it's like I can say that I said these words first?
I like that. Yeah, I think part of it partially was that for sure. Like,
Hmm,
especially with the idea of like social media now
yeah,
is like is like this it's like evidence, right? It's like a timestamp to say like if someone ever came at you with something and you can show them like, hey, like look, I did this joke on this date at this time or it's on my album. So I think there is that, like the idea of having physical proof, you know, and again, I guess that's like a double-edged sword too, right? Because like a lot of people are burning and exhausting a lot of their material on social media or turning to like crowd work clips. And then now you have like audience members coming to shows expecting that. Like they want like
hmm,
just you to talk to them or like doing the riffing stuff. And it's like I also want to work on my material. Like as
yeah,
a stand-up comedian, my material is also important as much as the crowd work piece is. Because historically, crowd work was just a way for me to segue into my next joke, or like maybe like you know call out something in the moment. But now it's become like that's what audiences are like eager for. That's why heckling is
hmm,
such in a weird fucking gray area because they feel like they're part of the show. You know what I mean? Because they see that shit
Yeah.
online. So,
Ah, I never thought of it from that light.
yeah,
Interesting. It's funny that you mentioned that too, because like a boy of mine, Akeem, um,
from
he,
Montreal.
yeah. Did you see
Yeah, yeah,
his
big up
latest
Akeem, bro.
thing where he in the audience?
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah,
was doing crowd work from the audience.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's fucking interesting. Where it's like, I wonder if that can be an example of like a way to get your name out as well, where it's like go to a big person, go to a comedy show
yeah,
with names, and then try and you know get that word in when they talk to the crowd.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I think I was yeah, I was curious to see like, but you know what's weird? I saw that clip too, but I think that's what the show was. I think the
Oh,
show was based around audience participation, but it just so happened he was a comedian
yeah,
in the crowd. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So it was
yeah,
like that's what made it funnier. Like, yeah, shout out to Akeem, yo.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
um, is there any legs on, or would this just then be like an improv show? But like, is there any legs or a concept where a comedian can just do crowd work for a show?
Yeah, I mean, you see it all the time. Like, Akash put out a special. Matt Rife was doing it for like, um, for so long, and that's kind of where he got his notoriety from.
Yeah,
Schultz did it as well. They put out like literally just a crowd work special. So I think
yeah.
like there is definitely a skill set and a talent in it, and I think there is a market for it, right?
Mm,
Like I would never. I'm not one of those individuals that think like oh, crowd work is hacky because there's some guys that will say those things, and it's like, no, I think that's a skill set on its own,
mhm,
and I think if you're able to tap into that and perfect it, why would you not do that, right? Because that's like, and if anything, those are the type of comedians that I think are most hardest to follow, right? Because it's like
mm,
now they've got the whole crowd on their side, they've built a relationship, and now you're having to go up after them and like stand there and tell a story, you know? So I think it is definitely a skill set that you want to have in your arsenal, right?
yeah.
Even if it's just a little bit for you to tap into your material afterwards. But I do think it's not even just that, is there a market for it? Like it's people are doing it. So I
Mm,
think it definitely is something that is worth exploring. I personally don't think I would be able to do like I do crowd work, but I don't think I would be able to do like 15 minutes consistently of it. And I've seen guys that just do that, you know?
yeah, yeah. So with that, with your experience in it too, like I'm still green and I've been talking to other comedians and other promoters and stuff, and they're saying how it's like there is this a norm where it's like if you're submitting to festivals and stuff, like they want a script.
Not necessarily a script, but I think when you're submitting to festivals or submitting to contests and things like that or galas, they don't really want to see crowd work. And I think because their reasoning behind it is if like I'm doing a set, say as an example, I've never done it, but like for Winnipeg Comedy Festival, right? They would want to know that you're able to showcase your material that either fits one of their themes and is also TV clean. But crowd work doesn't really show that you have the ability to actually sit down, write material, and think of it because
Mhm.
and have that material work, majority of the time or have it be consistent. Because a problem with crowd work is crowd work isn't always consistent, right? Like you're going to have sets where the crowd might not even give you anything, or
Yeah,
they might not even want to interact. So then it's like you need material. So
yeah,
I think with stand up, there is no one or the other. I think you
mm,
need to be good at both. I think some people might be better at one spectrum of it than others. Like I think there's people that have mastered crowd work, but may not have the strong material to back it up. And then there's individuals who have great material, but if, like I said, if you put them behind someone who just did a set doing all crowd work, it's going to be way harder for them to follow that. because
Mm.
now the crowd wants more of that. They want to know you. They want to build a relationship. They don't want to just sit there and listen to jokes. Um,
Does that mean there's
and
potential that that would look bad on you if you do that and then the comedians after you, like, they're like, what the fuck?
I think it depends. Like, I think that's where like the competition of comedy also comes into play too, right? Because now
Mm.
you're up there by yourself, and like you always want your first thought in your head before you touch the stage is like, yo, I want to murder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to make sure people can't follow me. But then I think as you as you start garnering it as a career, or as you like start building up your career, you notice that it sometimes does really depend. Like if I'm hosting a show, in my mind, and some people might have different opinions about this, but if I'm emceeing or I'm hosting a show, I would never want to destroy or murder like too much before the headliner, right? Like I don't want to make it a point to say I'm going to bury this guy, because now it's not just that like the headliner is having a tough time, it's that the audience doesn't get a good show, right? Because now they just
Mm.
saw an MC do like a ton of time and like do quote unquote better than, and I'm not saying this as an ego point of view, I'm just giving an example,
Yeah.
but like better than the headliner. Now the headliner goes up and he bombs for like 40 minutes or doesn't get the same energy, and they have to sit through that. So it's like you want to make sure the show is consistent. So I think hosting is one of those positions in a show where your job is just to make sure that the energy throughout the show is consistent, that everyone's
Mm.
engaged, having a good time. So like that's what I mean is that there's some headliners that are incredible storytellers and their pen game and their writing is amazing. So in a situation like that, I probably wouldn't do too much crowd work before them. I would try to do some crowd work to get the crowd engaged, then do some material so they get used to hearing material. So
Mm.
they understand what like the show is going to be, and then bring up the headline. But if I know the headliner's comfortable with doing crowd work, then I would probably do that. Like I would probably like do some more crowd work, get them engaged so that people are talking, they're more loose, and then the headliner can come up and do his thing.
How often do you host?
As of recently, a lot more often because, like I said, I'm starting to get a lot more opportunities in that light. So, and I used to fucking hate it, and like I
Mm.
know a lot of comics still hate it. Like, if I had to choose, I wouldn't prefer hosting, but I also am not like I don't shy away from it anymore. I think in the beginning, I was very much so like, yo, like hosting sucks, but I think it is a different skill set, and it does give you like it does garner a better skill set for you overall, right?
Mm.
Like, because when you're hosting, it is your job, and I think that's the other thing is like as a host, someone told me this one time, and I never really. It was probably the best advice I got, um, like for hosting, which was as a host, your job isn't to kill or like be the funniest one in the room. Your job is to make sure that people are having fun and have a good show. So I think that releases a lot of pressure because as a host, you're also the first one on stage that has to warm up the crowd, that has to get them engaged, introduce people to the show. And that's usually the hardest spot, right? It's
Mm.
like the room's completely cold. They're there to have a show, but they don't know what to expect. They don't know if you're gonna be shit. You know what I mean? So it's kind of your responsibility now to kind of do some cleanup. And then you're also the last person they see when they leave. So you want to make sure that you're likable, that their people are able to interact with you. And one of my biggest pet peeves is like because I don't think there's any rules in stand up, right? Like I believe like everyone has their own unique voice, they bring their own niche. But one of my biggest pet peeves that I hate is seeing people shit on the audience when they're hosting. Because it's like now
Uh,
you're just making it harder for everybody else, right? Like now like you just put people in a shit mood. Like you're up there
yeah.
and like if the crowd's not giving you what you want, you can't be like, oh, you guys fucking suck. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, bro.
Yeah,
Now they hate
yeah, yeah.
us.
That's funny. Um,
Yeah.
with that now, with like because you mentioned like you have comedians who are like storytellers. What are the different types of comedians that are out there?
Oh, that's I don't even know if I'm qualified to answer that, but like I guess like
So it's like you have people that give anecdotes, you have
yeah,
people that storytellers, you have people that
one-liner, right? You have like those one-liner comics. You have a lot of alt guys, right? Like I think the alternative scene's huge in Toronto too, where
mhm,
like it's not conventional stand-up. It's
yeah,
like I wouldn't say like to the extent of Andy Kaufman, but like the idea of like I said, like the non-conventional kind of goofy or out of the box type comedy. Like there's a lot of that,
would you
right? There's a lot
classify
of
like a pothead in that category?
oh, that's a good question. To be honest, I would put stoner comedy or pothead comedy in its own category.
Hmm.
Like I wouldn't even say it's really alt because it's like Toronto is like known for that, right? Like it's known for like it, and it's crazy because it was like we had that shit going on before the States did. Like,
Yeah,
you know, people in New York, like comics would visit from America or New York and be like, yo, you guys have shows where people hotbox the room. Like it's unheard of, you
yeah,
know? And it's a different skill set. Like I'm sure you've probably performed for high audiences and it's like
yeah,
it's a whole different thing than performing to a drunk audience.
yeah,
You know, like people are drinking and it's actually a little bit more easier because they're more loose, they're there to have fun. And high crowds are still fun, but they can be very intimidating because of how fucking stoned everyone is.
yeah,
So they don't really give you the reaction you think you deserve, but they're enjoying the show. They're just
yeah.
not laughing out loud, you
Man,
know?
my first weed show, I was like getting higher as my set was going on.
It's crazy, dude.
I was like,
Yeah,
I had there was a point in there where I was like, I really need to focus.
yeah, yeah. Like, bro, if you don't smoke, it's like you're going to get high. I know
Yeah,
stoners try to say like, yo, there's no such thing as contact high, and it's like you're already high. How do you don't know that? You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Oh man. So over those 8 years, what was your, whether it be formal or informal, what was your training like to finding your voice?
that's um I think yeah, there was like again, informally, I think a lot of it had to do with just consistent stage time. Like I know it sounds cliche and that's what a lot of people say, but you know, in the beginning you don't realize like and I think the stand-up scene definitely changed post-pandemic. I think there was a huge difference from what it was in the recent years than what it was when I started. I think it's grown exponentially. But also, like I said, the introduction of like, not to say social media wasn't around back then when I started, but it wasn't like a platform of what it is now.
Yeah,
You know, it's like this is like the marketing tool. But for me, there was a lot more open mics when I was coming up. And like, not like audience either. Like, I mean, like you would be signing up for a show and you might not get on till like 2 in the morning, and there's just three other comedians in front of you, and they don't give a fuck of what you have to say. They're just waiting for their turn to go on, so they're not even paying attention. So like, you do that for a number of months or you know, a number of years even, and that really starts to demotivate you and like take a hit at like, yo, what am I doing? Like no one's even listening to me. There's no audience. Like who am I even doing this for? I don't even know if this works. So I think there was a lot of that. But what I didn't realize was like that is the training grounds, right? Because
yeah,
when you finally get in front of an audience, and there's a silence between your jokes or there's you know people aren't paying attention, you're not intimidated because in your mind you're like, yo, I've already been through the trenches.
yeah,
I've been through like feeling like shit on here and knowing what it feels like to not have people pay attention, but now I have a room full of people in front of me. Like I'm
yeah,
not going to let this go to waste.
yeah,
So I think there was that. Like I think there was the aspect of not knowing what all of that was for. And Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr, they call it hell rooms, right? Which is basically when you're in a room where it's an unwinnable situation,
Mm,
right? There's nothing that you can do that will save you from this. You just have to survive and do your time,
yeah.
basically. So I think that's where the training definitely came in with that.
What was the most amount of shows you did in one night?
In one night,
Yeah.
um, probably like to be honest, the average back then was probably like three or four. Because
Mm,
you would like, yeah, you would like I would get to the city around 6 o'clock, and then you would have to sign up at different mics. So like for the first hour, you weren't even performing yet. You were just going to different bars to put your
oh,
name on a list. And then you would go back to the first bar that you went to. Then you would wait for your slot. You would do your time. Then you would have to run over to the next show. Um, and at the time, there wasn't really anything that was like, because in New York, it's like you could walk down one street and across 10 different shows. So it was easier to jump from show to show. But in Toronto, you got to do one show, hop on the fucking TTC, you know what I mean,
yeah.
streetcar, whatever it is, and book you to the next one. So I would say the most I probably did was like four.
How many shows would you have to work a joke until you feel confident putting it into your set?
These are sick questions, bro. And these are I've never thought of these. Um, to be honest, again, I think to be honest, I think it depends really much on the joke. Like sometimes
Mm,
there's those like golden nuggets that like just fall in your lap. You know what I mean? Like something happens in your daily life, or you see something like, that story itself is just funny. Now it's just about how do I tell this and trim the fat and get to the punchline the quickest. And those ones I would say usually don't take long. I would say like maybe like three or four, a couple shows until you have like a solid foundation. And then of course, the more you do it, the better it gets because you're able to refine things. But then for those jokes that I think you're trying to touch on a lot more controversial subjects, like there was a joke that I talk about like working at a special needs daycare, which is on the album. And that one took some time
yeah.
because I think when I first had the idea of the story, and it was a real story. So like when I first had like the idea or urge to tell the story, I realized I wasn't ready. Because
Mm.
like I was still going to do
You
it in
weren't
a
ready
very
or the joke wasn't ready?
I wasn't ready. I think
Okay.
as a comedian, well, I think bit of both, right? I
Okay.
think the joke becomes ready when you as a comedian are ready to take it on.
Okay.
So I think like at the time, that story was very sloppy when I was first trying to tell it. I was using trigger words, right? Like I
Hmm.
think I'm a huge advocate for the idea that you can say anything on stage, but I also believe that there is consequences to what you say and how you say it. So when you look at people like Bill Burr, who's like a white male talking about race, but the way he does it isn't racist. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the way he's doing it isn't like he's shitting on minorities, but he is telling you his perspective from his world and his point of view. And it's not like he was able to get there right away. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
didn't see the open mics of when he was saying probably outlandishly racist shit. But not to say that he's racist, but like he's probably
Yeah.
saying racist shit to get to the point he's trying to make. So I think with me, again, touching on topics like that, there was a lot of stumbling and making mistakes and saying shit
Mm.
that I didn't mean. But because you're nervous, you don't know how to like get the laugh out yet.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it for that one it took some time. I would say for that probably a couple months actually to
Gotcha.
get it to where it was and to get it to a point where I was comfortable saying it in any setting.
Mm.
Like I think that's the other big thing is that if you're telling a joke like that and you start getting nervous, it's weird because like subconsciously what you're doing is you're telling the audience that this is wrong. But if you're saying it with like a sense of confidence to know like, yo, I know this is a joke. So I
Yeah.
want you to know that this is just a joke. I don't mean this shit, you know?
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, it's specifically touching on like the disabled, where I feel like I didn't really start hearing that many jokes on it until like Shane Gillis came out with that joke of the
Yeah,
Special Olympics. So
yeah,
like
yeah.
when I phrased like, was it you or the joke? Where did that also help? Where it was like having another comedian kind of break down that wall to see that, oh, people do find that funny.
It's funny you bring that up because Shane Gillis, I never even heard of him
Mm,
till like last month, which was I know I'm super late to the game,
yeah.
but like I don't really watch, and that's weird at being a comedian, but like I don't really watch stand up. Like
Okay.
I'll watch like you know what I mean, big shit when it comes out. Like if Louis drops a special, I'll watch it just to
Mm,
like see what he has to say, or like Schultz, you know what I mean, the same idea. That special need joke I had like years ago. So like this was before I even discovered Shane
yeah.
Gillis. Um, but when I saw him and the way he told it, again, it was one of those things where I saw it, it was like, okay, yeah, like I'm thinking in the same direction because I knew one of the biggest things for me was when I told that story because I worked there, right? Like I worked at the daycare for special needs youth, and I worked with them, and I loved what I did. I loved the connections that I've made with all of these guys. So in the back of my mind, I would always tell myself, if in a random chance that one of these guys or their parents or someone from that field that I worked in were to hear this joke, what would they think of it? Right? Did I
Mm,
do justice by them? Did I do something to offend them? You know, did I do something like in which I use them uh as like a stepping stool to further my career just for this joke? Or will they hear it and actually share the same laugh as I do?
yeah.
You know, because that's the one thing I wanted to make sure was that I wasn't punching down on anyone. And
Sure.
like when you listen to the story, I'm not shitting on anyone with special needs. Like I don't
Yeah.
shit on anyone with a disability, but people pull back because they hear special needs and they're like, this guy's gonna say something crazy.
Yeah.
But more so, it's just about bringing a humanity to them,
Sure.
right? Because
Yeah.
people are very quick to pity people who are in a quote unquote less fortunate situation. But it's like pity doesn't equate. The pity to me makes me feel as though you're seeing as me as less human or you're seeing them as less human
Yeah.
because it's like then you're saying they're not allowed to have their own flaws or insecurities or whatever their case is.
Yeah.
So,
I look at it from the perspective where it's like, do you know Rija? He
yeah,
has, yeah, he has muscular dystrophy.
no, I don't.
But like, it's just, there's a certain level of irony behind people where it's like you could tell the same joke that he tells, but because he actually has a disability, they'll laugh at him and not you.
Yeah,
It's like it's the same joke. But so if I'm hearing this correctly, you came up with this joke when you were 18 and you got into the field you did just so you can tell the jokes that you.
hey, no, that's definitely not it.
Thanks for coming on the show, Jesse. I was hoping to clear that up. Um,
uh,
with that now, let's back to training and the question of training, where what's something technical, or if you even know a few, then that would also be really, I'd be grateful for that as well, where it's like, what are some technical notes that you would have never came up with until somebody told you? Like for me, one person told me, um, when you're doing a set, do your second funniest joke first, do whatever you want in the middle, and then do your funniest joke last. Like, what are some of the things that were told to you?
um, like those, like that's similar to what I learned, especially like getting deeper into this, was you want your opener to be a strong joke so that people right away off the jump want to listen to you, right?
Mm,
Because if you open very weak, then it's like now you gotta work to get their attention back. But if right from the start you have them, they're already on board. They're like, okay, I want to hear what this guy has to say next. If you're working on new shit, throw it somewhere in the middle. I also personally, and I think this goes without saying, but I guess I'll say it anyways. But like, if you're doing a bigger show, like say a theater show, or like you're headlining a bigger club for the first time, I wouldn't really do new shit. I would kind of stick to my set, make sure I do the stuff that's polished. Um, but if I'm like featuring or if I'm headlining for the week, and say if I'm headlining on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday show, or if there's like a pro-am show or there's like an amateur night show, and I'm closing that out, then I would throw in some new shit. But if it's like a weekend show, people are out there to like they paid money, paid good money to watch the show. I want them to have a good show. So you want to rely on kind of your stronger material.
Yeah.
But whenever you have the opportunity, I would always say try your new stuff wherever you can, and throw it in the middle somewhere. Obviously, make sure you have a strong closer, um, and respect the light. I think goes without
Mm.
saying. Like, I know I'm still guilty of it. Like, sometimes I definitely do, might go over my time, but
I'll
respecting
always
the light.
miss the fucking Yucks light. Yuck
Yeah,
Yucks, it's such a small fucking light.
yeah, yeah. It's small and it's like it's already dark, so you're like it looks like it's part of the light setup.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Mm.
But I think respecting the light is huge. And when I say that, I also mean like checking your ego at the door. Because there's definitely been times where I've done this, and I've seen a lot of comedians do this, where if the set doesn't end strong, like if they say their closer and it doesn't kill, they're like they know that their time's up, but they're like, yo, fuck, I need to get this. Like, I need to end on a big laugh.
Yeah.
And by that point, it's like, yo, it doesn't matter. Like, you know what I mean? They If they didn't laugh, they didn't laugh. Just make sure it's fair for the next person going up. So
Gotcha. With that too, like when it comes to respecting the light and just like having that respect for that venue and the promoters there, what's
yeah,
more important, hitting up more shows to work on a joke or staying at a show and networking?
that's a really good one. And I think it depends on a couple of things. Think it depends on what your goal is. And I think it also depends on what show you're at. Like,
Mm.
if it's like an open mic, I'm not gonna stick around at this open mic till 3 a.m. just to talk to you guys. You know what I mean? Like, I know everyone's here just to do their thing and move on to the next. Like, this place is known for all of us to like workshop our material and move on to the next thing. You know, like we all have signed unwritten contract or unwritten rule that this is just a training ground and we move on. You know, that's not to say that you disrespect the venue or disrespect anyone by like talking and heckling out loud or shit like that. I think if you're waiting for your spot, you respectfully wait, watch the other comics before you then go up, do your thing, and then, say bye to the host. That's one thing I like to do is like I'll always say bye to the person that booked me, or
Mm.
I'll always say, greet and say bye and thank the person that put me on the show. Um, but I think if you're at like a venue that you've tried to break in for a while, like say for it's a club that you really wanted to work and you finally get the opportunity, in my opinion, I think I would stay there. So like even if I had other shows lined up, but I knew I wanted to work at this club for a long time, I would probably do my spot and I would wait and watch the whole show because that shows, at least to me, is like you're paying your respect. Like
Mm.
I want you to know how much this meant to me, not because of me being an artist, but also because of the fact that I appreciate your space and I respect what you do, you know? So that would be my thing. If it's like a space you really wanted to break into, I would probably do my set, wait, watch the show. If it's one of those situations where it's like an independently booked show, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing your spot and heading out to another show. But I would let that person know ahead of time. And
Gotcha.
I think like as comics, it's weird when that happens because you probably know this because you run a show yourself. Dealing with comedians when you're a producer is a fucking nightmare sometimes. And it's like, I don't know why that like we suddenly think that it's like okay because it's another comedian that's putting on a show to like let them know shit last minute or show up fucking 30 minutes late. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's not, you would never do that if it's another show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or you wouldn't do that if like you're at a club and they tell you to be there on time. You would be there on
Yeah.
time.
That was
So
crazy.
like,
This one comedian actually did that to me for one of my shows where he got another gig and then had to Oh, what a guy. What a guy.
okay, but but see, that's a good example though, like, 'cause but I came to you beforehand.
You did. You
You know
did.
what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It wasn't like on the day of I messaged you and was like, "Yo, fam, I'm not coming."
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I know mans that would do that.
Yeah.
Like, there's
Yeah.
people that will do that.
No, I've had that.
But
And I'm like, what
yeah,
the fuck? Oh man. Um, you're the first comedian that I've had on the show since Headliners came out. And when I watched that, there were so many moments that was like, all right, this is what I got to do. This is what I got to do. What was
yeah.
it for you when you were watching that? What moments stood out?
For what? Sorry.
Did
You mean like?
you were you able to watch Headliners with the Kevin Hart, Chris Rock on
Oh
Netflix?
no, I
Oh,
didn't.
okay, fair.
What? Okay,
Um,
wait, what is that though?
it's a behind the scenes of when so Kevin Hart did a tour and Chris Rock did a tour, and then
Okay,
it just so happened that their dates lined up where they would be in the same city in New York around the same time. So then they did a double headliner.
that's crazy.
And watching that kind of like, and there was a moment too, I'd say the one that stood out the most was Chris Rock kind of like showed us his set list, and
Hmm.
it's a fucking billboard of just post-its, joke, 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 joke. And it's like Kevin Hart even looked at that and was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, that's
Right.
crazy.
So it's like looking at that, and then when I didn't know that comedy albums were separated by jokes, or is that just what you did? Because whenever like there's a comedy album out, it's just one long track where you
Yeah, yeah,
actually
yeah.
have it separated by jokes.
Usually it like the ones I've seen, at least the more newer ones that have been on streaming sites and things like that have been separated by jokes. And I think there's a number of things behind that. I think it's one of it is it's a marketing strategy where you can like promote one of your best jokes, and
Mm,
then people want to hear the rest of the album. So it's like you're not giving away the whole thing for free. You're attracting people to see what the rest of it is. I think another part of it is just easier to digest, especially with people's attention span nowadays. Sometimes they don't want to listen to a whole hour thing, but they'll look at the track list and they might see something they resonate with, and they might listen to that joke, and they're like, "Yo, this was pretty funny. Let me listen to the rest of it."
gotcha.
And the biggest piece about it is like I think where the finances and the royalties come in, because like when you pitch stuff like this to like streaming sites, SiriusXM, radio channels, whatever it is, the more tracks you have, the more potential you have of those tracks getting played on the radio. Because they're not going to play an hour-long album at once. They're going to play, maybe a 3-minute clip, 5-minute clip, whatever it is.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and then with that, like, what was that process of? So it's on Spotify. What other platforms is it on?
It's on all streaming platforms and it's going to be on SiriusXM, God willing, hopefully by like end of the month or early next month.
Nice.
So it's on, and there's YouTube clips of the on as well, like on YouTube, like little video clips of the actual album. And then yeah, outside of that, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music, wherever you can listen to stuff, you'll find it.
Yeah. How are you finding the social media game?
Uh, I used to hate it. I still am not like a huge fan of it, but I also see the effectiveness that it does have. And I think it does allow for, being able to reach um, more people. One of the biggest benefits I see of it is definitely the fact that me being an independent artist, a lot of people across the country may not know me. But
Mm,
if I'm doing a Canada-wide tour, for instance, which is something that I'm hoping to get done later this year as well. Even if I don't have a following, say in like Nova Scotia or fucking, Newfoundland, for instance, with the power of social media, I'm able to reach people there by like boosting ads, doing sketches, whatever it is, so they can see me and that can still cultivate a following. Whereas if I
Mm.
was doing it completely independent without social media, there's no way any person would be able to hear me, see me, or have my voice reach them. So I think as a tool in that sense, it's become huge for people who are doing this grind independently without like, maybe a full team behind them. So I think like if you're trying to yeah, I think as an independent artist, social media is like can be your best friend, but it could be your worst enemy.
Who taught you how to utilize ads?
No one really like it
Okay.
kind of was trying to figure shit out on my own, like or like just talking to it with other comedians who have done done their own independent tours and figuring out like through them. Like
Yeah.
a
Okay.
boss is definitely someone who's like always on the fucking road. Ashwin's another guy who's always touring, right? Whether it be Canada or India, which is
Yeah.
crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like these are guys that like have definitely figured out. But what separates them though is that it's not just that they figured out the ad system. It's also the fact that they already cultivated a very strong social media presence and following.
Yeah.
So they have kind of fans around Canada or around, India
Okay.
even, who are willing to come out and watch them. Whereas someone for me, I don't have a strong foundation, so I'm just kind of relying on the ads working.
Yeah. Because I kind of need help with that. Because like I have a joke about
Yeah.
this too, where um I was at home the other day, and then my dad was like watching a video, and I could hear that it was my video.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "Yo, you're watching my video," and he's like, "Oh, this is you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh." And then he closes the video. So it's like I'm paying for my dad to just watch a clip of it, not even know it's me. And then he finds out it's me and then he just closes it. So it's not even getting the whole fucking view. Like what the hell?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like how do I do it properly? How do I know this is going to an audience that I can benefit from? Because I'm pretty sure my dad's not even going to tell anybody
No.
about that.
Yeah, yeah. That's so funny. Cause bro, but to be honest, 9 times out of 10, that is what it is as well. Like I've done it. I've spent like money on boosting a lot of these ads to have it not work. Like
Yeah.
it hasn't even moved ticket sales. So I
Yeah.
just spent money. I'm out of pocket now. So I think a lot of it is by chance, to be quite honest. Like I'm still figuring it out. Like I haven't figured it out at all.
Mm.
And there are times though where like I'll feel hopeless about it and be like, yo, this shit doesn't fucking work. But then I'll go to a show and then someone like random person from the audience would be like, yo, I saw your shit on TikTok or I saw your shit on Instagram and that's why I came. And that's when I'm like, yo, I like how? Like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? I only have like I'm almost at 3,000 followers now,
Yeah.
which isn't a lot compared to some of these other guys. And it's like to see that people that I never have met say and come up to you and say like I saw this, like I think a lot of it is by chance and it is consistency.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just the consistency piece of maybe consistently posting or like putting up um more content. I think that's a huge part about it. But then there's some guys like newer producers that I've seen, newer comics that came in who have just somehow fucking figured it out. And I don't know
Yeah.
how. Because like they'll have like 1,000 followers, maybe 700, but sell out every show that they put on. And that's when I'm like, okay, what the fuck am I doing wrong? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
What's the fucking trick? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, it's wild. Um, so with this show, I also touch on the concept of like mental health and what
Yeah.
artists and entrepreneurs go through when it comes to chasing their dreams. So I'm curious to know like what are some of the things that you have to face and what were some of the things that or tools that helped you get through them?
I mean, like, uh, I think for any comedian who's like first generation Canadian or in a household where, you know, their parents are immigrants or mom or immigrants, I think there's always been that expectation of, you know, me kind of rising to the occasion to be like a man of the house or like
Mm,
rising to the occasion to be the one to like somehow um meet the needs of my family and things like that. Like there's a lot of that pressure that's there. And along with that, I think there also comes a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that sometimes I still battle with, but I've gotten a lot better at, which is the, you know what I mean? Knowing that they have good intentions because they
yeah,
want you to pursue a specific career, make a X amount of money. Like the intention is pure, but well, I shouldn't say pure because sometimes it is like, you know what I mean? It is a
it's
lot of like
influence. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But or status, you know what I mean? There's a lot of that. Or what will people think of us and shit like that. But then I think the guilt and the shame comes into play of like knowing how much they had to sacrifice to build a life for me coming here from India and like, you know, working hard. And my mom was working like three jobs when she had me. I didn't see her much. When they came here, they were escaping like a war that was going on in India. She was a single mother, so I can resonate that there was a lot of things that she had to sacrifice and probably a lot of dreams and passions that she surrendered
mm,
in order to make my life possible and give me the privilege to even pursue something like this. So I think in the beginning, I was made to feel like it was almost selfish of me of wanting to do something that I love.
yeah,
But over the course of time, going back to the spirituality piece we talked about, I think it was the idea that not everyone can do what we do, right? Like there, and people will tell you that they're like, yo, there's no way I can get up on stage and make people laugh, or there's no way I could get up on stage and do what you guys do. Like it's terrifying to me. So I think if you have the ability and also the gift, because I do believe a lot of the art that we make, we're just a vessel to express those ideas that come into the consciousness, you know, and we're just that vessel at the time. So I think if we have the gift to do that, to not allow ourselves to do that is actually withholding it from the world, withholding it from like people who may be able to resonate with this or be able to share our stories and share our struggles. So I think that's one of the things that I had to really remind myself. And again, it's still something that I battle with today, but I think I also did it long enough where at some point my mom was like, okay, this guy's not gonna fucking quit. So it didn't really turn into like you need to change your career, you need to focus on something else. It kind of
yeah.
just became, all right,
For me and my mom, it was like 10 years. So it's like I first, like the first big step of doing something that my mom didn't want me to do was like I started fighting. And then
mm,
like she she didn't come to my first fight. But then when she started coming to the fights, like she didn't watch the fight because like she didn't want to see me getting hit. And then yeah, after 10 years of doing it, like she's like, okay, he's winning. I guess he's good at it. I guess I'll support
yeah,
this. And then by that time, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to act. And she's like, what? What the hell?
yeah,
And then
yeah,
again, like 10 years. It took at least 10 years until she was like, okay, I'll let you do this. But yeah, no, I
yeah.
totally understand. I totally get that. So with that, then, like, are you full time with it now or not yet?
I would say yeah, like full time in a sense that like I'm usually perform like these last 2 weeks have been kind of quiet since the new year started, but I'm kind of going back into it consistently again now. And
But
full
like,
time in the sense of
are you still working? You have a day
I
job?
do have a yeah, I do have a
Okay.
day job, but
Okay. Gotcha.
one of the things that also keeps me there is that I've been at the same place organization that I've been at for the same amount of time I was doing comedy. So I work at like a youth shelter, non for profit. So I've been working with like at-risk youth or youth that struggle with like mental health, addictions, things like that. And recently I got into like a program called FNS, which is working with young people and their families and trying to help bridge that relationship or reintegrate them back into the household. Um, and you know, so a lot of the I've been doing that for about the same time, but I also enjoy the work that I do. So I think that's also what kept me there, but also the fact that because I've been there for so long, I've kind of garnered a trust and a relationship with the people that I work with. So they are kind of flexible and they all know. So they're very much like encouraging of like the stand-up piece as well.
Gotcha.
And,
Nice.
you know,
Yeah. FNS with comedy.
yeah,
Just like this is how you're gonna get in. You got to make your mom laugh. You need to
yeah, yeah,
you need to convince her that you actually have hopes and dreams now when you get back
yeah,
here.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, awesome. So tying it all back together now, your album, Baby Goat, is
Yeah.
that then the goal is to release an album of the goat?
Um, I think, to be honest, I haven't really thought that far ahead yet. Like,
Mm,
I kind of put this out, and then I was like, one thing that I'm struggling with right now is trying to pull together new material. Like, I think,
gotcha.
guys like Louis C.K. talk about how they would put out a special and they wouldn't do that hour ever again. And it's
Mm,
like, I don't know how the fuck he did that because I put out 40 minutes and I'm struggling with making up a new 10. You know what I mean? So I
uh,
think I think that's like my biggest challenge right now. Like I wasn't even thinking about a next album. I'm more of so like, how the fuck do I get material that's not on the album now? Right? Because like I said, a lot of this stuff that I put on there was over the course of years. And that's not to say that um I would never do it again. Like I think there are times where it's okay to like rehash old material or jokes that you love doing. Like I would still do that. But I also want to know that if someone who heard the album and was a fan of it comes to see me live, that they just don't hear the same thing again, you know?
mm, mm. So
So
then with that, like, let's say you're getting ready for the next album, would you
mhm.
then, I guess it'd be counterintuitive to like already start working on new jokes so that by the time that album's done, you have already some formed jokes. But like,
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
are you so I guess what's next now? What's the steps now? Because I'd assume you have more of an understanding of what your voice is now. So it will
Yeah,
only
yeah.
make that writing the jokes would be easier now, or is that not the case?
Um, yes and no. Like I think I'm more comfortable going on stage and not and being okay with not knowing what I'm gonna say. Like like usually now when I go on stage, I don't ever have in my head a set list or an idea of like what joke I'm gonna start with, what joke I'm gonna end with. I kind of just go up there like with a blank slate and see what the fuck happens. And
Mm,
then sometimes I end up relying on old material and I'll bring out old material and I'll do that. Other times I'll just do some crowd work in the beginning and then like I'll try to segue into a topic that I think is funny. But majority of the time, like I said, if I'm doing or headlining a show, I'll kind of just do the album material I've been doing. But just switch up the order. So like I'll just try to start with a different joke and end with a different joke just to see what works and to keep my mind kind of like flexible. You know what I mean?
yeah.
My biggest problem though, like from not, I wouldn't say this is a problem. I guess like one of the challenges for me though that I'm facing now is that when I first started comedy up until this point, I never wrote down a single joke. Like I never wrote. Like my thing was like I would think of a joke, I would think of a punchline that I thought was funny, and then I would go to open mics and try to workshop like my setup until I got to that punchline. And
Mm,
when I got to a point where I thought it was good enough to translate onto a stage like a club, then I would do it at the club. And if it worked, I would keep it. And that's kind of the formula I kept up until now. It was a longer process because a lot of the time I was waiting for life to give me something, or I was waiting for a spontaneous thought or a moment or idea to help trigger that. But I think now I might be having to shift gears and actually dedicate time each day to either write or sit down and try to think of shit. Whereas
mm.
before it was like I was just waiting for shit to come to me.
Yeah. So with that, then, how often would you then, or do you review your tapes to like, okay, this part, I should say that first. I didn't like this part, or is it just all memorized?
I just do memory. Yeah, I've never really
Okay,
done tape things either. Yeah.
gotcha.
But I will say like I said, like I think one of the things that I want to start looking into now is like maybe not even writing in the conventional sense, but just taking an hour a day to just think of stuff,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess last thing to leave on then, just because like we're fucking talking. Um,
Yeah, no worries, bro.
when it comes to thinking of jokes, drugs, alcohol, where because like for me, and I hate it. I genuinely hate that I come up with like my funny shit when I'm high. Because then it's like, do
Yeah.
I need this? Is this like why can't I think of this sober? I hate that.
Yeah, yeah.
So like what's your process when it comes to thinking of jokes? Is that it? Just
I,
sober, sit down for an hour?
yeah, I mean, I don't smoke weed anymore just because I thought like, not because like I was like, oh yeah, man, like I had to cut down. It was just like I just started getting paranoid as fuck. I don't know what happened. Like back in high school, I was like a pothead smoking every day. I was fine. But then a couple years later, I noticed every time I got high, I just got hyper aware of shit. Like I would just get really anxious, so I just stopped smoking. I'm not a huge drinker. Like I'll drink like on occasions, but like if I'm like, out and about, like I won't really grab a drink or anything.
Yeah,
So like yeah, kind of just sober. And then I know it's like pretty cliche, but like in the shower, you know what I mean? I'll think of shit. That's probably the best place.
yeah.
Yeah.
Dope. Awesome. Well, yeah, Jesse, baby goat. Um,
Thank you.
good luck with everything to come. And hopefully a new album would be sooner than later.
Yeah.
And other than that, like, is there anything coming up that you wanted to share with anybody?
Nothing as of right now, but I am planning a Canada-wide tour, so just be on the lookout for that. Hopefully, tentatively later this year, sometime in September, I'll be announcing it. So definitely like keep an eye out. If you guys haven't checked it out already, a short film on YouTube, Tales from the Mendem, you can check that out.
Nice.
And yeah, bro, you gave me a lot to think about. These were dope fucking questions, bro. These were
Yeah,
sick.
man. Also, yo, watch Headliners if you can, if you have the
I will.
time.
I will watch that
And
today. Yeah.
I wanna hear your thoughts on it and I want to
Is it
revisit that.
on? Is
Netflix.
it on Netflix? Okay.
Yeah, Headliner. So yeah. Yeah, other than that, yo, everybody, thank y'all for tuning in. Jesse Singh, check out his album, comedy album on all streaming platforms. I have it on my Spotify. Like it as well, because that's also another thing that fucking people need to understand on the social media game. Yo, if you support somebody,
Yeah.
like their shit, share their shit, comment as well, because it's all the fucking algorithm. That's how other people
Yeah,
see it, and it costs nothing. That's what I can't
for sure.
enforce enough. That nobody just shares shit because they think that, oh, for whatever reason, they just don't do it. Yo, share it.
Yeah.
What the hell? But yeah, the 2 Degrees podcast brought to you by the Play On Foundation. Check out www.letsplayon.org and see how you can become part of the fight on raising awareness for brain aneurysm development and prevention. Other than that, thank y'all for tuning in and hope to see you next time. Ingat kayo.